Hello, Broadway fans. We are just days away from the 2023 Tony Awards. It is finally upon us, and we have to figure out what's going to happen, who is ahead for these plays, an amazing season of plays. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby, and here helping me figure it out is my good friend David Buchanan. Best play, David. Leopoldstadt has been pretty far out for a lot of the season, but has had plenty of challengers, actually three Pulitzer Prize challengers. So has anything changed for you as far as your thoughts on best play?
It hasn't. I feel pretty good about Leopoldstadt. All the other plays, I mean, it is an extraordinarily strong category to the point where I feel pretty confident in that. But then I'm also having such a hard time ranking the other ones because if it loses, is it to Fat Ham, which is really popular, did decently in nominations, is currently running. The other shows, are closed, which is, at times can be detrimental. But Ain't No Mo overperformed in nominations. It could do well in some of these other categories. Those are maybe like the two other plays that I was considering, but I feel pretty confident that it's going to be Tom Stoppard. How about you?
I still have Leopoldstadt out front. I will say Fat Ham has emerged as incredibly strong competition.
Yeah.
People are really responding to Fat Ham. I think Fat Ham feels like it's another play that is kind of like speaking to right now, and is highlighting Black voices and queer voices. And it is really speaking to people, and people are like going back to see it again. Is it enough to win over Leopoldstadt? I'm not sure. But I feel like Fat Ham isn't going to go home empty-handed somehow. But I still have Leopoldstadt. And I will say about Ain't No Mo, the interesting thing they did this year is that Tony Voter Portal, which has been very helpful for getting closed shows wins.
True.
There was a change this year with it where if you haven't seen just one eligible contender in a category, you can still vote in said category. You don't have to recuse yourself. That could be detrimental for Ain't No Mo in several places. Because just by virtue of its very truncated run, there will be a lot of voters who didn't get in to see it. Will they do, the right thing and not vote in a category? Maybe some will, but some probably won't. So we'll get into that later, but that could, there's a few places where I think it could still win something, but it could, like for best play, it definitely is a major hindrance there. So I think it is definitely Leopoldstadt or Fat Ham here, with Leopoldstadt with a pretty clear advantage. It's been a very strong player. Revival of a play is something else though, because this was a really, really competitive race. Ohio State Murders wasn't nominated. Death of a Salesman wasn't nominated, despite, people really enjoying those. I've switched. I originally started the season with Piano Lesson out front, and I've dropped that to number 4. So the whole thing is completely flipped on its head for me. I currently have A Doll's House out front. What are you going with?
So this is where we're going to start to see my inconsistencies in my, argumentation for a lot of these categories, because
that makes it fun, David.
I have Top Dog out front. My rationale.
That's second for me.
Yeah, I have two reasons why. Number one is totally a gut instinct. Like I knew when we were talking about nominations that both of those actors were going to get in. Would I have listened to myself and left them in, the night before the predictions would have been great for me. But, like just a gut that the show is going to do, did well in nominations, is going to do well. The other one is I feel like of these 4 productions, it is the most acclaimed. Like I feel like Doll's House, which I have number 2,
definitely,
and I think is going to. I have it winning, I think, one other trophy. If it wins this, I have it one other place. I feel like Jamie Lloyd, like people, I happen to really enjoy Jamie Lloyd's productions and his aesthetic and his directorial vision. Are there just enough voters who don't that vote for Top Dog, which, like I said, was, probably the most universally acclaimed of this crop of nominees. So that's my rationale. But tell me why Doll's House.
No, I think you're pretty on for your rationale. It's tricky with Top Dog Underdog because one, it's closed.
Yeah.
And going up against A Doll's House, which is still running, that people can still see and have fresh in their minds. And Top Dog Underdog, the nature of the play, I think, meant it had a very low threshold in terms of total nominations it could get, and has also a low threshold in terms of total wins it's competitive for. It is another one of those shows that could not win anything but still take revival and take the top category, which is tricky to predict because I will get to acting. I don't personally have either of the actors winning lead.
No.
And that is like, it's real, like it is a showcase for these two actors. So if you're thinking Top Dog, you may be thinking it's just going to win there and not take anything else. I think A Doll's House, though, Jamie Lloyd is the only one of these directors that was nominated for director in a play from the revivals, which I was actually shocked by. I really thought Kenny Leon would get in for Top Dog.
Too.
But I think a lot of times when we revive a play, you look at it as an audience member of like, well, what do you have new to say about this show? A Doll's House is a show that everyone has seen, everyone has studied and seen multiple interpretations of it. Jamie Lloyd still found something new to say with this piece that has been around for eons. And I think that says something. Like, I think I don't know if he'll win director, but he'll definitely get votes for director.
Yeah.
And I think it says something that he's the only one of these folks of the directors for revivals that made it in. And that's what's really, I don't know, that's what's like really cementing it for me, is that it does seem like people have gotten behind his vision. And even if it's not their favorite version of A Doll's House, or even if they have quibbles or stuff that they're not a fan of with his choice, they still respect it and admire it. And I think that goes a long way. I still think it's a close battle. I could be totally wrong and Piano Lesson just still comes out, but that was like underperformed, I think, in nominations compared to what we thought it would do.
Yeah.
So I've moved towards a race between A Doll's House and Top Dog Underdog.
Yeah.
I'm not super confident either way.
Yeah, me either.
But yeah, well, since we were talking about Jamie, let's go into director. Who do you see as the front runner for director?
I have to look. I don't even know where I am right now. Let me check my latest predictions. I don't have Jamie out front. I have Leopoldstadt. I think because, you know what, it's an epic in the sense of it's not as challenging in terms of the production as, say, Life of Pi, which I have in the upper kind of half of my slot. But it's an epic in terms of the story it's telling, the time it's traversing, the kind of complexity of the family and the historical plot. I think that could win, especially if that wins Best Play. I'm also looking at Fat Ham. As you said, if Fat Ham is a really strong challenger, I think that tonally is such an interesting show and takes a really, knowledgeable hand to make that work. So that, I think, is my number two. I'm also thinking of Life of Pi from a technical standpoint. And also, I think, we'll talk about the design categories. I think Life of Pi is going to do very well in the design categories. So that's not very helpful. I've narrowed it down from the, how many, 7 that are nominated to potentially 6 that are nominated to potentially 3 that I think could take it.
I think there's a lot that could take it. I don't think there's a definitive like front runner who's steamrolling this category. I have Leopoldstadt. It is so huge. Like, it's the best play front runner, and it's just like this, it's a massive thing to wrangle. It starts in 1899, goes all the way to 1955. I don't even know how many characters. It is a lot to chart for the director. And that director is Patrick Marber, who I guess was one of those people I always assumed just had a Tony, but he doesn't have a Tony. He's never won. I don't know if they've made a big enough deal out of that in their campaign or not, but that could definitely be a reason for people to vote for him, to finally give him that. I do think this is one of the only categories that Fat Ham could probably win. So I think just like in Best Play, we have to look out for it here. And I think the tone of Fat Ham, it kind of really swings for the fences, and that is a lot of that's the director's doing, just as much as the script in this case. So I don't know, and I know a lot of people are picking Life of Pi. I just have hesitancy because it wasn't a Best Play nominee, even though it's probably, the most technically challenging. There's so much going on in Life of Pi that is usually what gets a director win. Like if you think of other larger than life stagecraft heavy shows like Cursed Child or Warhorse, even late it's late, David. What the Lehman trilogy?
Lehman.
Like, what was the Bankers? So like it could win, and sometimes the voters like something better than the nominators did and wish it had gotten into Best Play. But I'm sticking with Patrick Marber for Leopoldstadt for now.
Same.
Well, let's continue down a Life of Pi train here and move on to some design categories, because Life of Pi is what most people have out front for scenic design, I think.
Yep.
I would also say that A Christmas Carol is really competitive for a scenic design. I actually feel like these two shows, the stagecraft is so mind-blowingly good. I want this to be a tie more than any other category that has ever happened at the Tonys that I've covered. Like, this is the category where there should be a tie. It is like unfathomable to me that one of these shows will not win this category, because they're both just remarkable achievements, in my opinion. I'm giving a slight edge to Life of Pi because it's still open, and so it's more fresh with people. Do you think there's any way that Life of Pi loses?
I think there is a way. I have Christmas Carol in second too. I think that's very strong, and you make a compelling, case for it. I just think, Life of Pi, like, it's not, I don't want to over assert how often we see sweeps in the design categories, but we did see a different production of Christmas Carol do very well in numerous design categories. So they're not, opposed to a production that they love, giving it, 1, 2, 3, trophies in the design categories. I just think Pi is so strong across the board in this way that I'm sticking with it here.
Yeah. And the big question for me is, can it win costume design? Because the Tony administration did rule that the puppet designers are eligible for costume design, which actors are kind of wearing them like costumes, but it's something that they usually don't do. I can't remember the last time they've thrown puppets in to this category. But do the voters actually know that? Are they going to remember that? Are they paying attention to those eligibility determinations the same way like a nerd like me is paying attention to them? I don't know. And they're not on the ballot. So I don't think it's kind of like, I'm not sure that there's enough costume like throughout that play to win without the puppets.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm at, is, are people really keyed into the fact that they are also voting for the puppet designers here? That I'm not sure of. What do you think?
If they are, I think it will win. Are there enough of them who are aware? Like you said, I don't know if they've made a good point of that, because it's also, that's something, we've talked about projection. When are projections included in lighting design? Some years, some shows it is.
Design. Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know if people are following that, level of detail. To your point, I do have it out front right now. I think there are a few other shows that could be strong here, so I would not be surprised if Life of Pi didn't win for exactly this reason. I have Leopoldstadt and Ain't No Mo as my kind of two possible alternatives. How about you?
Yeah, and I have Leopoldstadt, Ain't No Mo, and then Fat Ham.
Yeah.
I don't think Good Night Oscar can win this category.
Yeah.
Not that it's not great, but I think the other four all have a legitimate shot.
Yep.
Fat Ham has this really you know, I don't want to spoil things, but they've also spoiled everything in their marketing anyway. So it has this
Yeah,
really
true.
amazing finale, this like very like queer circuit party, let's go to the disco dancing finale. And all the characters come out in really epic, fun costumes for that the designer clearly had a ball with. But is that one scene enough to win? It is what you're left with. The rest of the play is very much, you know, contemporary dress, so it is not the most flashy. The final scene is super flashy. Is that enough? I'm not quite sure. Ain't No Mo might be like my personal winner for costumes, just because there's so much variety in it. There's so much like there's like really over the top, campy, trashy reality TV players in it. There's the opening with, you know, the like congregation that's very funny, and there's just all sorts of different types of costume design that is really fun. But again, I'm not sure if enough people saw it, and those people who didn't see it potentially have the option to opt into this vote despite not having seen everything. So I think it is probably Life of Pi. Leopoldstadt would be the more traditional seeming winner for costume design, just because it has a lot of like period accurate clothing, and there's just so many people to costume. I could see them scooping that up as well. And do you have Life of Pi then winning lighting and sound design as well?
Lighting, yes. Sound, no.
Well, what do you have for sound design?
Sound design, I know this is going out on a limb, but I have Doll's House for sound design.
It's not a limb. It's a good, well, it's a good limb. It's a good limb, I think. That's my number two.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's my number one for now. I just think, listen, that sound design makes the intimacy of that directorial vision work. I think if the sound design was not as strong as it is, you know, the whole kind of conceit of that production doesn't really come together.
Totally. It's Doll's House ASMR edition.
Exactly.
It's like the whole time I was just like, are they like going to make an audiobook after this? Because it's already like formatted for a really like clean, nice audiobook, which seems like a strange thing to say. But like I know a lot of people who are talking specifically about the sound design of A Doll's House. So I do think that's a really strong competitor here.
Yeah, and it feels like, you know what, your call from last year, I mean, totally different shows, don't misunderstand me, but the Dana H call on the sound design over kind of, you know, the intimacy of that show over the epic Lehman trilogy, which also did well in other design categories. So that's kind of an analog that I'm, you know, using to justify, you know, the smaller show that has such precision is making me pick Doll's House.
That's been my second choice for a while. You might have me switch it. I think I'm going to switch it to number one. Maybe that'll be the one thing that Life of Pi doesn't take here. Let's look at some acting races. Let's move on from design. Lead actress in a play. Speaking of A Doll's House, Jessica Chastain, she's trying to EGOT. Is she going to EGOT or not?
To me,
well, actually, let me say this: she can still EGOT. She can still win a Tony because she's the producer in A Doll's House, so she could get a producer Tony anyway. So, but back to your acting thoughts.
No. To me, it's Jodie Comer. It's very close. I mean, look, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to sound overconfident because I do think Jessica is so beloved. I mean, she's truly like, has been so embraced by the theater community, clearly loves the work, and the performance is great. So I feel like she's really in it, but I just feel like what Jodie's doing is almost undeniable. You know, I have a little bit of a caveat there, but I just feel like the performance is like, you know, it just different, you know? So that's, I'm giving the edge to Jodie.
They couldn't be more different from one another. Like Jessica Chastain has to do so much emoting stuck in a chair, which is really exquisite to watch what happens on her face and what she's able to do with her body from this one position. But Jodie Comer, I can't believe this is her first time on stage.
I know.
It's insane to me when you realize that fact, that she's never acted on stage before this show. I have no idea how you would memorize this piece. I have no idea like how you would go about like delineating beats for yourself in a script, because she doesn't stop. I think I was actually surprised Prima Facie didn't make it into best play. I thought there might have been a 6th slot for it, because I do think people have responded to it really well in the industry.
Yeah.
So I think this is Jodie's to lose at this point. Jessica, you may have to console yourself with a potential producing Tony win instead for A Doll's House. The lead actor in a play race, I think, is much more competitive, but I feel like I've wrangled this category, and I feel like I have got it down to 2 people for myself, which, all due respect to everyone, because this has been not just these 5 people, but every lead acting performance this year was pretty remarkable, I would say. But I think it is between Sean Hayes and Stephen McKinley Henderson. Do you agree with that?
That's my top 2. I also want to just add, I think there's an outside chance for Wendell Pierce. I know Salesman underperformed a lot in the nominations, but I feel like when it's at a much wider pool of folks, you know, that performance, the play, the material, and Wendell as, you know, as an industry member, as a beloved actor in the community, like, I don't want to rule him out. So he's like in my 3rd, and I'm, you know, kind of playing with where to put him, but I do have Sean Hayes out front too.
It's so weird, because when this season started, like, Death of a Salesman happened, when did I see that? Back in the fall, I guess. And when I saw that, I was just like, oh, he's clearly winning the Tony.
I
right
know.
Because it's like, how many productions of Death of a Salesman have, like, I don't even know how many I've seen at this point. It's a play that everyone studies. Like, we know Willie Loman is a character, and he still found new ways to interpret it, which is pretty remarkable. But I don't know, they just really, it's just like him and lighting design, right, that it got. I was shocked Sharon D. Clark didn't make it in. She was incredible. But that made me second guess what to do. That's why I bumped him down to 2nd place. I think Stephen McKinley Henderson, this would be really the only place to reward between Riverside and Crazy. And he's like, you know, I talk sometimes about like, don't underestimate the hometown advantage with the Tonys. They like to support like their people, and Stephen is he is a man of the theater. He is just like synonymous with the New York theater scene, and he's never won before. And so there's he's going to get a lot of support in this category. But I have Sean Hayes out front right now, just because he's the only person in a show that's still open, and he ticks off so many boxes for what people vote for in acting awards. He plays a real person, physically, vocally transforms. He's a very kind of I can't think of words tonight because it's been a long day, but he's very, disheveled and really going through it. And also plays the piano at the end. So it's just like, check, 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 check. Everything you want for an acting winner. So I feel like he has a slight edge.
Yeah, I think to your point, not just the performance, but the fact that it's running now. I do think, these other shows like Salesman and Between Riverside and Crazy had healthy runs. Like, it wasn't like if you weren't in town, if you're not local and you weren't here for 1 month, you missed it. Like, they were here for a while. Totally. But it just helps that if you didn't get to see some of these things, if you haven't seen Goodnight Oscar yet, you can still, you still had a chance while you were voting to see it. It's fresh on their minds. That to me, is a selling point.
Well, and another thing, like, I've seen all these shows, and so when you do see everything in rapid succession, I think a strong performance, even from earlier in the year, can stand out because you've seen the breadth of the season. But the issue is the lead acting contenders have been so unanimously great. Like we could have also had Jefferson Mays in here, John David Washington in here, Hiran from Life of Pi. There is a lot of amazing performances. And so like when I first saw Death of a Salesman, I was like, this clearly has to be the guy. This is our guy for the season. But then every single person became the guy for the season. And that's why I think Sean Hayes does have, on top of the other advantages I mentioned, why it's even more of an advantage to be open this year. Because every time it's like someone raises the bar with every show that's opened. Well, let's move to featured acting. Because I have a feeling that featured actor in a play is maybe an easier call. Let's start with featured actor. I feel pretty secure that this is Brandon Uranowitz's year for Leopoldstadt. Is there anyone else that could take that from him?
No, I was toying with the idea of putting Arian Moayed in like second. I feel like he's my strong runner-up, not just because of Doll's House. And it's clear that Doll's House has strength. You know, we're talking about it as a winner or a potential winner in a lot of categories. So I feel like that, plus, you know, the fact that he's been a lot of places, not just for the Tony Awards, but for Succession. Like he's doing a lot of press for Succession. Like people have really come to know him, you know, as an actor, you know, over the past few years. So I feel like he's having a good moment, but I think it's Brandon's.
Yeah, I have Arian is in third for me. I have Jordan E. Cooper in second. Just he's been such a like force and a like new discovery for people that I think he would have a shot. And the character is very larger than life. He gets to end the play with a really heartbreaking moment. And he's also the playwright of Ain't No Mo. So people who did enjoy that play could just sort of vote for him there as a way to honor the whole thing and all of the work he put in and the work that he did to save the show. That social media campaign, which extended the life by a week, was one of the biggest stories of this whole season. And I feel like that's enough, frankly, for people to like maybe even like vote for him without seeing him. Like they'll just want to embrace that. I mean, Patti LuPone's calling him out, saying like he's one of her favorites this season. So I think there's a slight chance there. He would be my number 2, but I just think Brandon Uranowitz has he's the only actor from Leopoldstadt. He gets to go on quite a journey in the play. He's in the final scene of the play, which is very moving. So you end with a vision of him. And he's just been turning in amazing performance one after another. And this feels like it's his moment. Then let's end with featured actress. I've totally like flip-flopped and gone all over the place, but I've gone back to Crystal Lucas Perry for Ain't No Mo as my number 1. And I don't care that it's closed. I don't care that it had a short run. I just like feel like if this play was still open, or even if it had enjoyed a normal, like healthy run of a few months, we wouldn't be having any debate. This would be the biggest lock of the night because this performance was what, like, I feel like this was like my Deirdre O'Connell moment from last season when I was just like, this is acting. Like, this is what we need to be like lifting up, is this really special moment. If she doesn't win, I think it is because the show is so short-lived.
That's my only concern. I have Crystal in second. I just moved her down just one slot, and it's not necessarily permanent. I am just concerned, you know, just as you said earlier, in an earlier year, like last year, with the different kind of voting system, it wouldn't have mattered. But the fact that you are permitted to miss a show and still vote with a show that had such a short run does give me pause. So I have Miriam Silverman in first. I was not really expecting her to get the nomination. She, you know, surprised me with the nomination. Not really surprised, but you know, she wasn't in my predicted 5, so she exceeded my expectations there. The role is clearly on the radar. The production did pretty well overall. Not so much with acting, but you know, I just feel like she could do it. Like, this role is a past Tony winning role. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe
It's
that's
been
accurate.
nominated
Every
three
Every time?
times each. It's been on Broadway 3 times, and the actress playing this character has been nominated. It's a very awards friendly character.
And I feel like she has really been around. Like, I feel like even if you're not familiar with the show, you're familiar with her, you're familiar with what she's doing in the show. You hear great things about the performance. It opened at the right moment in the season, maybe a little too late actually, but in terms of voting for winners, like, it opened at the right time in the season. So that's my rationale for Miriam. But I'm not ruling out Crystal. I might switch it right after we finish this discussion, because I feel like you're right. That is a performance that if you saw it, you're probably voting for it. My only concern is, did enough of this larger pool of people see Crystal?
Yeah, well, what I will say is that I think there are some people who may also, in addition to not seeing Ain't No Mo, have also not seen another strong contender in this category, and some other ones, which is Cost of Living, which finished its run. It had it was a limited run to begin with, but it was fairly short, and at a time when not all out of town voters will have gotten in to see it. So if they've missed 2 in a category, and actually there's 3 that they would have missed here because Carrie Young and Katie Sullivan are both nominated for Cost of Living, then they wouldn't be able to vote in featured actress. So that could help. It could reduce the pool of voters here to a size where basically everyone has seen all of the performances. And I think also to note, Katie Sullivan has a lot of support from people who saw Cost of Living. I'm still haunted by when she almost drowned in a bathtub, and I don't know how they did it, and I don't want to know. It was like a crazy stage moment. She could also have a chance at winning here, I think, if we're again shrinking the pool down to people who have seen everything. I would say, for me, the people who have a real shot would be Crystal, Miriam, and Katie to win this. But I could be wrong, and Miriam is here in a show that's open and doing well, and she has the type of role that usually wins these things. I just feel like while everyone in this category is really excellent, I've never seen anything like what Crystal did, particularly with that monologue, the character Black. So I'm just going to stick with her, right or wrong. I'm just going to stick with Crystal Lucas Perry. So if you think I'm crazy, if you think David's crazy, and we've led you astray, and you have something to say about it, the best place to say something about it is on Gold Derby and your own predictions. So make sure you log those predictions before the Tonys on June 11th. See if you can outscore the 2 of us. And thank you as always, David.
Thanks, Sam.